All right, I am in another cemetery, so you know what's coming. But before I get started on that, Justin, check out the hat. Yeah, I got one. I am in Buffalo, New York, and we are walking up here on the grave of the 13th President of the United States, Millard Filmore. If you Google Millard Filmore and then Google Alec Baldwin, you will be amazed at the resemblance. But yes, Millard Filmore. Let me switch the camera here. Millard Filmore was the 13th President of the United States. He was served from 1850 to 1853. He was elevated to the presidency on the death of Zachary Taylor. He was Zachary Taylor's vice president. And when Zachary Taylor died in office, Millard Filmore became the president. He holds the distinction of being the last president to not either be a Democrat or a Republican. He was a Whig. He was the last Whig. Baseball has a stat. All right, let me flip the camera here so I can try to explain this. Baseball has a stat called WAR. Stands for wins above replacement. Let me turn around so you can see the grave while I'm talking. Stands for wins above replacement. And it has a stat, I don't like it, but the general idea is that if you have a guy on your team or in your lineup, how many wins is that guy going to have versus a random baseball player that you would put in your lineup? How much better than Mr. Joe Schmo, average professional baseball player, is this guy? As a stat, I'm not a big fan, but that's the general idea. Millard Filmore, with one somewhat notable exception, in my mind, is that average, everyday schmo baseball player. He was a warm body who filled a seat for 3 years. I don't think he ran again. I don't know for sure. A lot of times when I do these videos, I give you, generic facts about a president. Most of the time, I'm doing those facts from memory. I have not done any reading on them especially. It's just stuff I know from being a huge dork for 52 years. Millard Filmore, before I got here today, I actually had to look him up. I didn't remember what number he was. I didn't remember I did know he was the last Whig. I didn't realize he was the last non-Democrat or Republican. But I didn't remember exactly what years he served. He's just a generic dude. There's really nothing special about the guy as far as presidents go. He wasn't ever intended to be president. He was supposed to be vice president. Zachary Taylor, the amount of time Zachary Taylor was in office, he ignored Millard Filmore. Millard Filmore was just a warm body filling a seat until Zachary Taylor's body became decidedly non-warm, and Millard Filmore was stuck into the job. About the only thing Millard Filmore was involved with that had any impact whatsoever, really, was the Compromise of 1850, which was already in works when he took office. Zachary Taylor had started it. The Compromise of 1850 was the first attempt to not have a civil war. You know how well that ended up working out. It did probably put the Civil War off. It was basically, it required northern states to help capture slaves and return them to their owners, like capture escaped slaves. Slaves were, in non-slave states or, on their way to Canada. It was a very controversial piece of legislation, and it did not have its intended result, which was to not have a civil war. But other than that, Millard Filmore was just a guy in a chair. He didn't accomplish a whole lot. He didn't do a whole lot of damage. He was, okay. The Compromise of 1850, if you were a slave, did a shit ton of damage. But to the country as a whole, Millard Filmore was just a guy. If you are a teacher, which I have several teachers on my Facebook, if you're a teacher, he's one of those faces up at the top of that picture, that set of pictures you have in your classroom of all the presidents. He's the one up near the top, number 13. Is that right? 13? Yeah, 13th. Who looks like Alec Baldwin. He's just a guy. So there's not much else to say about him. Let me flip the camera back around. So this is the grave of him and his wife. He died in, I want to say 18, well, what is his tombstone? Oh, that's their children. That's the kids. Let's see, where's the actual grave of Filmore himself? That's his kids. This whole area looks like it's a family plot. Let's see. Millard Filmore. That's his wife, Abigail Powers, wife of Millard Filmore. She died, looks like 1853. Did she die? Am I reading that? I can't read that. Let me see if I can zoom in. See if the camera can catch it better. 1853, it looks like. Which would have made her, let's see, March 1853. She would have died either as he was leaving office or right around the time he left office. Let's see here he is. Okay, here he is. Millard Filmore, 1874. That's what I thought. 1874. So Millard Filmore died in 1874. He died well after the Civil War, so he knew that his signature piece, I guess you would call it, I mean, it was the Compromise of 1850 was a desperate attempt to stave off the inevitable. In retrospect, definitely that's what it was. I think by 1874, when Millard Filmore died, I think everybody would have realized what a colossal failure the Compromise of 1850 was. So, anyway, yeah. As far as presidents go, of all the presidents that have ever served, Millard Filmore was most certainly one of them. He usually falls in the bottom half somewhere of most presidential rankings. Not necessarily because he did anything horrible, but just because he didn't really do much anything at all. Later on in the 1800s, there's a whole bunch of guys who have I guess using my baseball analogy of war, Millard Filmore has a WAR right around 0. In the late 1800s, there's a bunch of guys who have a WAR right around 0. And Millard Filmore is definitely one of them. He's just the guy who sat in a chair for 3 years because the guy that the people elected to sit in the chair for 4 years died a year in. I think that's probably him right there. And MF Stone. That's probably him right there, MF with the flag. So, anyway, Millard Filmore, the 13th president of the United States. Served from 1850 to 1853. And, yeah, he was a guy who sat in a chair in Washington, D.C. Good for him. Have a good day, everyone.